Um, so I thought to take everybody here to my local train station in Metuchen, New Jersey, because I've grown up and whenever I would go into New York City, this would be the train station that I would take to come in. And Metuchen's always kind of held a special place in my heart. It's you have a Main Street downtown feel, and you know, I grew up pretty close to farms and countryside, so this was really the best of both worlds. And the other day, my parents and I were having a little dessert here on Main Street. It was around 6 o'clock or so, 7 o'clock, and you had the commuters from New York coming home. So you can see them leaving the train station and walking up the sidewalk with their furrowed brows, and they were really worn out, pretty much. And it really got me to thinking it was a perfect way to explain the busy lifestyles that we have here in the world. I mean, in New Jersey, in New York City, but around the world, people are busier. With digital technology, we're always on. We always have to be on. We always have to have the energy and the focus, and it can be pretty draining and pretty overwhelming. So, so I'm sitting with my parents, and we're seeing these people parade by, and I said that really speaks volumes to the demand, the stressors on the endocrine system, and some of the buzzwords that I think that everybody hears today in the media. But my job is really to make sense of it all, because it's not just a standalone issue with the adrenals. It really affects the whole body, and so I thought to come here to Metuchen, and here at the train station, it's really the perfect metaphor. It's almost a poster child location. So let's talk a little bit about the adrenal system. Adrenal system is part of 4 endocrine axes, so endocrine pathways from the brain to the body. And so we talked a little bit about that in my welcome video, and I thought to step into the neuroendocrine concept of physiology. Now, there's really no such thing as this elusive balance where you have a utopic destination. Really, balance is just the ability to adapt to stress and recover from stress. So let's talk a little bit about this neuroendocrine function, and something that you probably have heard called adrenal fatigue. And adrenal fatigue doesn't occur just on its own. Adrenal fatigue then affects other endocrine systems. And what do I mean by that? When the adrenals have been drawn upon, it's like pulling funds out of the bank. It's like putting your ATM card in the bank and pulling out funds. Now, what happens when you pull all the funds out of that bank account? You become overdrawn, right? So then many people have overdraft accounts, right? So just like the body, we have other ways of gaining energy and being able to produce energy and to be able to function and sustain life. But what happens when you blow through that overdraft account? You go into debt. You have to take a credit card. Now, eventually, you have to pay that credit card back, right? It's the same thing with the adrenals, the adrenal bank. So when you keep pulling money out of the bank, or you keep drawing resources from the adrenals, you eventually become depleted. And so the body will continue to provide energy, but not necessarily in the right pathways. So oftentimes, like when we see people with women with reproductive disruption, you don't really want to just feed the body estrogen or progesterone or testosterone. You actually look at what feeds the reproductive hormones, right? So what feeds the reproductive? It's the adrenal pathway. So if the adrenals are tapped out, you're going to have other endocrine disruption. So I digress a little bit there, but I needed to explain where that was going. But just really staying with the adrenals, we tap our bodies out with constant motion, with driving schedules, with people who manage children, and with just the emotional stresses in life, the emotional body we talked about in one of my introduction videos. So I thought this would be a perfect place to start, and the busyness that wears on us, and that ultimately is what causes the disruption. Now, where do we mitigate that, or where do we support that? And obviously there are things that we can do in a general lifestyle approach, but sometimes that's not enough. And sometimes people will say, well, I'm getting plenty of sleep and I've cleaned up my diet, but I'm still constantly getting sick, or I'm still having hormonal disruption, or I'm still gaining weight. And we really have to look at giving the body a little bit more, and that comes from the medicinal herb extracts. Now, something that I see a lot of is kind of the herb du jour, and by that I mean people will read a book and say, oh, I'll use an example, licorice root. In Chinese medicine, licorice root is in almost everything. It's an adrenal tonic, and it's wonderful. I use it quite often. However, it's not ideal for everybody. Not everybody with adrenal fatigue really should be taking things like licorice root. We see that also in thyroid disruption. People with thyroid disease may not have the ability to process the licorice root in a way that is safe. It can disrupt the electrolytes in the body. The kidneys and the adrenals regulate the electrolytes. So there's really an art and a science to herb selection. But the point that I think is important is that you do all of the healthy recommendations on your end of things, but then I meet you halfway and give you what you need to put the funds back in the bank, to put the funds back into the adrenals, your resources. So I think that's really the point of coming here to Metuchen. It's one of my favorite places. It's a tiny town a tiny blip on the map, but it's peaceful and it's home.